on YouTube. We are live. Hello, hello. I was just saying over on Facebook this morning that on Friday we hosted a summit that was called Who is Jesus and Why Did His Story Matter? And that was very interesting. I highly recommend it. I got it up last night, so I hope you will go and check that out. I am going to share my screen to YouTube or share my screen over on, here we go. I am sharing, oh, that was not what I wanted. This was, okay, just a second. It's just not working quite as I needed it to this morning. There we go. So I'm going to share with you a song that is going to be on the Album 22 compilation CD, which is super exciting. And so I'm going to put that into full screen. We might be a minute late by the time we get started, but this is Alex Bouye, Still Breathing. And I'm going to do some of my handstands while we do it.
Stretched out like a rubber band, stressed out like a working man. Oh, all I need is a helping hand from someone who loves me. Best friends with anxiety. No one even checks on me. No, a little love is medicine from someone who cares. I thought that I was always missing something, but I found it. The moment I can hear the beat of silence that surrounds me, and I'm still breathing. I'm still breathing, yeah. Still breathing. Still breathing. Oh, no. Laid out like an old guitar. More than nothing life's gonna bother. Not easy from where we are to keep our heads up. I keep finding the mirror, hoping one day to see everything clearer. My life should be comfortable, but nothing grows there. I thought that I was always missing something, but I found it. The moment I can hear the beat of silence that surrounds me, and I'm still breathing, still breathing, still breathing. I'm still breathing. Still breathing. Still breathing. Still breathing. I was always missing something. In the moment I can hear the little silence that surrounds me. I'm still breathing. Still breathing. Still breathing. Still breathing. Still breathing. Still breathing, still breathing, I'm still breathing. Still breathing, still breathing, breathing. Still breathing.
Bravo. All right. So we're still breathing. And that was Alex Bouye. I believe I'm saying his name correctly, but phenomenal song this morning. Grateful to be able to share that with you and to say that song or one of Alex's will be on the same one that I'm going to be on, because we're putting it together and we're bringing together great minds, which is exactly what's required right now. And on Friday, in fact, I co-hosted a summit with the title being, Who is Jesus and Why Did His Story Matter? It isn't to say that he is the most important human being that ever existed either. It is to say that he represented what we can all do, because even he said, this you too can do and more. And so this morning, I'm going to just quickly draw a card, the one that falls out, the ones. Interesting. 34 was close to coming out, 32 at the bottom, and the one that fell out being 14. So these two were the ones that I want to share as we begin this morning. 14. I'm going to read to you the definition, and I'm going to suggest that you decide how this feels for you. And know that the one that fell out is actually gratitude. Gratitude is a very powerful energy, which can open both the heart and mind to all the wondrous blessings we are given. Take time each and every day to offer your deepest, heartfelt gratitude for all that you have and are given. Make a conscious effort to look for all the good that is flowing into your life. Send your love to all those you cherish and love. Your acknowledgement of the divine flow that supports and provides for you opens your energy in a powerful way. You will become your own bright light, even in the darkest of times, which we are living together. 34 was the other that almost popped out, and it is reflections. So there is great beauty in all of our life experiences. Although you feel sad and down at times, Spirit is reminding you that this is what can facilitate your greatest growth and evolution, both as a soul and as a human being. You are truly being watched over at this time. Don't fear the darkness within. Remember, without the darkness, there can be no light. This is the time for quiet reflection and inner exploration. Through it, you will discover your light and know what needs to be changed so that you can live a more authentic life. These cards were drawn or created by Cheryl Lee Harnish, and I do want to just simply say, at the foundation of this week, this card represents the nectar of life. You work so hard, and you are definitely to be commended for your efforts. This card is asking you to slow down a little and enjoy the simple things in life. Spend some quality time with family and friends. Take time to embrace life and do some of the things you honestly enjoy. Focus your energy on activities and things that bring you true pleasure. Taste the sweetness of life. Feel empowered to pollinate and fertilize your dreams. This is at the foundation of gratitude and reflection for this week. So, as we now get ourselves prepared to dig into the reason you may be showing up to be on the call and to be part of this experience this morning. Hello, Summer. Great to have you. Thank you for joining in. Welcome this morning.
Hi, Laura.
Hello.
Hold on a second.
How are you doing?
Let me get some light on that.
This is amazing. Well, we're just about to dig into The Artist's Way. And so, Summer, you were one of the contributors to the Mystic Music Mad Albert, is it album 22? No, you are just oftentimes sharing onto Where Misfits Fit, Home for Soulful Seekers.
Yeah, I have done that a lot in the past, actually. I haven't been that active now because there's been like a lot of processing and things like that I've been going through. But yeah, I have done that in the past, though. Amazing.
Yeah, I recognized your name and I was just piecing together where I recognized you from. So welcome. Thank you for joining in today.
It's nice to finally talk to you.
Yeah, we are live, just FYI. So, but as somebody that I appreciate your your candidacy and your willingness to be vulnerable and say, yeah, I was doing a lot of posting and I was giving while my cup was running over. And that whole experience of gratitude and giving from the overflow. And then I needed to take some time back to go through my own process and maybe pull back from doing what I used to do in abundance or excess, maybe not excess, but as much as what you did. And then you're in a space now where you can come back and you can plug in and now make the connection and go deeper. So the hero's journey is exactly like that. And I can't tell you how many times I've done that through the 10 years that I've been a coach, teacher, speaker, and judged myself every time I went through the reinvention of my self-image and identity. So every time we go through that, it's like we take off the veils of who we used to think that we were, and then we find who we truly are, but we don't know who that is yet, and we aren't who we were before. So it's like being in that liminal phase between where we were and where we're going, and the becoming, which is like the caterpillar inside the cocoon that just the caterpillar doesn't want to share the experience of coming apart while actually dissolving necessarily. But afterwards, when we come out of it and we can share the experience, we own that, because then we can integrate all of those experiences and the reflections, which was the card. I'm not sure whether you saw that I was doing some card pulls, but I pulled gratitude, reflections, and then the foundation was the nectar of life. So I feel like we only really get to the nectar when we actually go through the digging that turns coal into a diamond, like what you've been experiencing recently.
Yeah, absolutely. I can say that I am definitely surprised by like how things have turned out. One of the things that's principal to my life story are like stories in general. And it's like, no matter how much I think I know what's going to happen, it's always like reinventing something completely brand new that is always like shocking and surprising to me, like about where the story ends up going, to the point where I've even had I have like particular things that happen in my story. One of the stories that I've told in one of my videos is that I actually have been shown by my guide futures that will happen in dreams. So I constantly have like visions that appear in my mind that she'll bring up into me, like showing me like what's going to happen. But a lot of the times she also like implants false visions that she wants to sort of play out various like negativities and things like that I have, in order for me to kind of like not go down that path. And so things she showed me that I thought were going to happen and made sense for where I was in the past have now like changed and changed and changed and gone into like different directions in all sorts of ways that are like incredibly like fascinating to me, because like I mean, like she's like a master storyteller in and of herself, but she also has shown me like even this conversation I've also seen in a dream too. So it's not just like false things, it's actually like real things that come into my life that I actually have that experience with. So it's quite a quite an eye-opening experience, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we trust what we feel. And then when it comes out differently and we believed so wholeheartedly that that was the way it was going to be, there is the cognitive dissonance of the truth and what we perceive to be the truth. And I feel like collectively that's what we're going through right now. And I love that you brought that element into this, because literally on Friday, Michael Seegers and I decided to do the summit about who was Jesus and why did his story matter. And I just got that up onto YouTube last night, but it was a powerful conversation, because it's not to say that Jesus was, the only son of God from my perspective. It's just like the teachings of the masters say, like, we're all here to become ascended masters. And the way showers had to come before us in order to actually prepare the ground. So Jesus and Saint Germain, there's a chapter in Saint Germain on alchemy that I've read out loud that literally talks about how they were the way showers of the Aquarian age that we are now fully in, which is the opportunity we have to bring in the golden era. But in order to do that, we have to clear out our own darkness and pull out what is not authentic to us, as there's a lot of external input that's being put in, and people's skin is merging with that too, right?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up too, because I haven't actually I haven't heard too much about Saint Germain. Like I've come across him like here and there, and I've heard sort of like more like rumor stories and stuff like that about his beginning, but I haven't really heard like a concrete tale. Like I don't know if you're aware of that, but it's one of the things that I've always been fascinated with, like how he sort of became like an ascended master, because obviously he started like more like on the ground, like not in like a religious kind of like sense like Jesus, but like more like in I guess a kind of like standard kind of world. I guess he was probably rich, so it wasn't that standard, but it's still more like on like a more relatable level than like someone like Jesus, who just seems to have been like very Christ-like at a lot of points in his story to begin with.
Only because those are the parts of the story that have been highlighted. And then it's also to say that the book was written 200 years later through the impure filter of man. So everything is always going to have the contamination of the vessel that it came through, including us, which is where the ego comes in. When we are veiled over our authentic nature with the egoic need to edge God out and be God. But don't be God, because that's blasphemy. Because that's the culture that we have created or that we've accepted, where it's only one can be the one. It's even in relationships. It's like you got to have the one. And it's just like, that is a lot of expectation, because in our culture now, that one then has the expectations of everything else, like partner, best friend, lover, provider, support system, travel companion, like meditator, like grower, parent, co-parent, it's like we put everything into the one. And it's just like, that leaves no room for that one to fall. And everyone fell. Jesus fell. How many times in order to become who he was? It just isn't written about, because that doesn't, we always have to consider the story and who's telling the story and for what purpose the story is being told. We also have to understand the influences that are not being included in the story in order for that story to be told the way that it is. So with Saint Germain, he has a book that's called Saint Germain on Alchemy. I've been reading it on Thursday nights at 7:00 for the last few weeks. And before that, I did Katumi on the Aura. And I had also read The Alchemist and The Four Agreements. So on Thursday nights at 7:00, I do a book reading so that we can grow together and we can not have to necessarily go through the pains of sitting there and focusing ourselves, but you can listen to me be able to share it, because I want to get through it as well. And I like to share experiences that I feel can benefit other people, which is why we will get into reading the book that you came here for as well. But I appreciate the conversation and the opportunity to say Saint Germain and Jesus, both of those men ascended because that's what we've all come here to do, from my understanding. And if we actually think about the fact that they might have been born into riches. I don't know their origin story specifically, or necessarily the origin story of the other incarnations that they've had, because each of us this is a video game. Where do you think they get that idea from? So it's like, this is the avatar that's known as Laura J. now, that started out as Laura Jean Ellen Hamilton and, born to farming family. And then I was like, I'm creating my own identity, even though I'm still in the same place that I was when I started. Like, this was where I used to have a little chalkboard where my headdress is. And I used to teach my little teddy bears lined up in front of it. And, this is where I did that. This was where I, played cashier, because I thought that the two best jobs to do in life would be to be a teacher and to be a cashier. Because then you can talk to everybody and you get to sprinkle magic and you get to toss that into somebody's day. And that is alchemy. To be able to be that impact, to be able to come into somebody's life and just say, bam, you're beautiful. You're amazing. just to give that dose that somebody might not have within themselves. And you've done that in the group, which was why I recognized your name when you came on the call, even though it's the first time that we've had the chance and pleasure to connect. So it's like, please understand, like, you're closer, and it's far more achievable than you give yourself credit for, and that we all give ourselves credit for, to do this. Because my understanding from the teachings of the Ascended Masters is we only have to transmute 51% of our karma for all of our lifetimes in order to be able to ascend and do what he did. Because Saint Germain gifted humanity with the violet flame, and the violet flame is the gift that can transmute karma, that will keep us in the cycle of samsara, or suffering, or reincarnation. And so if we can actually burn the karmic seeds of our own selves, cells, and then also the selves of our creation. So it's the persona and it's the cellular. And when we understand that the cells of the body and the cells of our mind, and then when we merge those in with the spirit and the heart, and we understand the heart magnification and the radiance that comes when we're fully present, our threefold flame, which is wisdom, love, and power, burns at the center where the cord to our I am presence connects. And when we can really get into the understanding of who we truly are, the fact that you have a picture of God that you brought with you in the I am that I am above you, which has the Christ consciousness in between on the silver cord that connects us to who we truly are. The fact that we're never alone, because we always have that image that came with us, that we have an opportunity to merge with, if we're willing to burn away enough of the karma that keeps us so dense that we can ascend and meet. And then that's when we become embodied with the light, from my understanding.
Well, how do you define karma? Like, what exactly, like, physically would you say that it is?
Karma is it's with the law of cause and effect, or the law of consequence, choice and consequence. Every cause or every choice has an effect. Even indecision or choosing not to choose is a choice. So from my perspective, karma would be when we plant a seed, because every thought is a seed. So karma would be when we plant a seed that did not align with our truth. And when we plant a seed of mistruth, then it collects as karma that is dense, because then we have to live with our results. By your fruits ye shall know them, right?
Okay.
There's a causal body as well, which is where the I am that I am presence is. And from what Michael has explained, basically in the causal body, that's where your positively qualified choices go. So that would be karma as well, is what I'm thinking as to why I'm going to ask for some clarification on that. But you can have good karma or bad karma. It's just the karma that keeps us bound to the 3D is the one that wasn't aligned with thee, who you truly are. And so then you get stuck having to work through the choice that you made, so that your soul essentially reminds you not to live out of integrity or congruence with who you truly are.
Mm-hmm.
Would be my perspective. Do you have you've come up
well
with?
Actually, it's something that I'm trying to more clearly define right now, based on especially based on like a couple of sources that I was like looking at. My idea of karma, it seems kind of like similar to like what you're talking about. It's almost like a kind of like higher physics principle, almost like what you were saying of like cause and effect, kind of like if you displace something physically from your integrity, there's kind of like a gap inside of you, and thus you don't measure up. But if you retain that, or if you retain the integrity of what you truly are, you basically kind of like fill out to your full potential.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're able to do that, you then break that kind of like incarnational cycle, and you have that ability to transcend needing to come back like again and again and again to just work that out. But it sounds almost like Like it sounds almost like a physics principle, like just a law of like balance kind of. Like if the scale is too far over from to one side or the other, then you're like out of balance. And that kind of creates like that negative karma. So this life completes, there's another one after that because you're still not fully embodied at the balance point, at the true center of who you are. So when you finally achieve that, it just balances out everything. And it's more, it seems like from my perspective, almost like a science principle, kind of like of like just physical alignment, as best as I can understand it right now. But it seems to operate in ways that scientists or just humanity just in general would never be able to measure, because it's infinite, like in terms of what exists as our reality, not just physically in terms of what we can measure, but all the things non-physical too also are affected by that idea of karma, because we're everything that we are as like beings. So that karma has to do with like a lot of different things, but the essential idea is still sort of like that balance point. And then just operating out of integrity just takes you out of the balance. And then you have to bring it back in order to balance yourself as a whole being. So like the idea my guide was bringing up recently was the lives are almost like different legs of like a centipede kind of. And the centipede is like the idea of your soul having like all these like just multifaceted different lives making up the, like in a sense, like that physics of like the completed you. So there's like as many legs as are necessary to support that being as a whole. But from her perspective, and things she's demonstrated too, especially with time, is that karma is already paid off at a particular point. It's just that we're just living the experience through a chronology. We're just experiencing it almost like a movie that's already been shot, filmed, produced, everything. And we're just going to the movie theater and experiencing it as if it's brand new to us, but it already exists. It's like a compact kind of like idea, if that makes any sense. So it's like, it's a total experience that's already happened. We're just experiencing the happening, the unfoldment of it. And that was all on purpose. And that is also like physics as well, because every single life balances out the whole soul's different incarnations all at once, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like backwards to the way people are used to thinking of it. Like we have to like get to a certain point, but it's actually all those things represent our sort of backwards allowance or acceptance of the total shape of what we are as like a being of complete integrity. So that story of ascension already exists. Like your ascension already exists. It just exists maybe at a different point in this life or in another life, or maybe several lives chronologically from where we are right now. So that's basically my understanding of that.
Energy can't be created nor destroyed, only displaced. So it would make sense. And if all time is happening now like a multidimensional layer cake, then it would make sense that everything is already created because it's all happening in this moment.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So
perfectly fine.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I did want to just read the definition of karma for you, since you did ask. And what's nice about this is there's a glossary that has phenomenal terms and definitions. So karma is, it says Sanskrit karman, nominative, karma, act, deed, work. Karma is energy consciousness in action, the law of cause and effect and retribution, also called the law of the circle, which decrees that whatever we do comes full circle to our doorstep for resolution. Paul said, "Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." Newton observed, "For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction." The law of karma necessitates the soul's reincarnation until all karmic cycles are balanced. Thus, from lifetime to lifetime, man determines his fate by his actions, including his thoughts, feelings, words, and deeds. Saint Germain teaches the accelerated path of transmutation of karma by the violet flame of the Holy Spirit and the transcending of the rounds of rebirth through the path of individual Christhood, leading to the ascension demonstrated by Jesus. Is actually what we're going to be talking about on Friday. So this Friday at 7 o'clock Eastern, if you want to come for part 2, we're going to be gathering and talking about Jesus and the ascension. So there's actually a whole process with that Michael is going to be going into deeper, and others will have an opportunity to contribute as well.
There is one of the books that was made aware to me like early on, like probably like 10 years ago. Someone just dropped this off at my house one day, and I'd never heard of these books before. I don't know if you've heard of these. You might have, because it seems like you're pretty well rounded there. But it's called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East.
Okay.
You've never heard of this before?
Not specifically.
I didn't hear of it either, but it's a series of books by someone called Spalding. It was written approximately 100 years ago about these guys who go out to the Far East and they meet these masters, essentially, who are all like ascended masters who live out there, men and women living in this village who display the same like abilities that Jesus had. Mm-hmm. And they take them to temples. There's stories there that are very similar to tales that I've only heard in like abduction literature, like very, very similar to certain things that are in there, and very, very similar to the ideas that come through in the stories of like Saint Germain or Kadumi. I think Jesus is actually in that at one point. They demonstrate like bilocation to these people who they bring into the town. They demonstrate like multiplying their bodies. They demonstrate like levitation. They demonstrate like all kinds of like just amazing type things that I've only heard about like in terms of like Jesus or something like that beforehand. I had no idea that there were like living masters like that lived out there physically, not like at a higher level, but like physically walking around with people. And it isn't so much a new idea too, because I've also heard that there are people who are in excess of 300 years old who live in like villages who look no older than 40 years old, but you'd never know it just to see them unless they want you to know it. And it's like those people who are in these books. Like I'd highly recommend it if you're into this kind of stuff, because it's an incredible series of books, and they talk about like a lot of different things. Basically, they talk about these people perfecting their bodies to such an extent that they can take their consciousness up to higher levels and then visit it back down. And because they have that awareness of what the body actually is, they can do things like multiply themselves, bilocate, they can create food. They talk about love being like the most important thing in terms of like all their abilities being like the very source of everything. And that's something I've heard from like other mystics and masters like the entire time, that the idea of kind of like romantic or like fluffy kind of love is like one thing, but the solid like true concept of true love is like a power that transcends pretty much anything else that exists like on this planet. It is the source of all power. It is all power. It is all knowledge. It is the sum equation of like everything that any of us are looking for in any of our lives. And these books are like incredible. Like I would definitely recommend it if you have a chance to.
Thank you for the recommendation, Summer. And just say it again for anyone listening that might be interested.
It's called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East by Spalding. I can't remember what his first name is, but Spalding. I know the last name is Spalding.
That's perfect. Yeah, and honestly, it's a very timely contribution to the service this morning about strength, because we're so much stronger than we think. We have just been trained to give our power away. We've been trained to look to external authorities to tell us what is possible. We look to the stories to say, that was their story, but I'm, that's them and I'm different. And we create these comparisons. And I can tell you, with full transparency, because that's always how I am. It's just like my awakening journey almost killed me a few times. Like I didn't want to be here at times when I went into those darkest and those lowest points of losing hope, losing my faith in myself. And finally, I've had to fight to be me my entire life. And I finally just got so sick of fighting, because it shouldn't be this hard to be me, I thought. But it should. Yeah. Because there's never been another one of us. There's never been another me. There's never been another you or you. And so how could we possibly expect anyone else to be comfortable with our capacity. There's no chance that somebody that has no understanding of what is possible will be comfortable with the expression of that in the process of it. Because even when going up in the rocket ship, like that takeoff point, which is in between where you start and where you get to, everybody thinks they're going to die. And then you get up and it's just, oh, this is beautiful. And that's how the caterpillar feels. So we'll just say one more thing, Summer, and then I do want to honor the fact that this is the intention for today, but this is excellent too.
Oh, I was going to say that like even that is like a statement of karma too, is that this kind of like idea of a homogeneated society as opposed to being like individual puzzle pieces that only fit when you're truly uniquely who you individually were born to be, not who you were taught to be, but who you really are. And that's like that is probably one of the higher points of like really embodying like your karma positively, is just really being like what you built yourself to be, essentially. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just wanted to say that.
That's beautiful. Thank you for all of that. And very, very more timely than either of us can comprehend for what's happening on Friday. So I do hope that you can join at 7:00 Eastern Standard Time for the conversation on Good Friday, no less, about Jesus and the Ascension.
Okay.
So we're gonna, if you just want to mute yourself for now, Summer, I'm just gonna read chapter 8, which is it's a longer chapter, in fact. So I'm just gonna dig into it and love to have you on. And if you have anything that you want to ask at any point or say, just put up your hand or just get my attention, and I'm happy to do that. This week tackles another major creative block: time. You will explore the ways in which you have used your perception of time to preclude taking creative risks. Go figure. You will identify immediate and practical changes you can make in your current life. You will excavate the early conditioning that may have encouraged you to settle for far less than you desire creatively. Survival. One of the most difficult tasks an artist must face is a primal one: artistic survival. All artists must learn the art of surviving loss of hope, loss of face, loss of money, loss of self-belief. In addition to our many gains, we inevitably suffer these losses in an artistic career. They are the hazards of the road, and in many ways, its signposts. Artistic losses can be turned into artistic gains and strength, but not in the isolation of the beleaguered artist's brain. As mental health experts are quick to point out, in order to move through loss and beyond it, we must acknowledge it and share it. Because artistic losses are seldom openly acknowledged or mourned, they become artistic scar tissue that blocks artistic growth. Deemed too painful, too silly, too humiliating to share, and so to heal, they become instead secret losses. If artistic creations are our brainchildren, artistic losses are our miscarriages. Women often suffer terribly and privately from losing a child who doesn't come to term. And as artists, we suffer terrible losses when the book doesn't sell, the film doesn't get picked up, the juried show doesn't take our paintings, the best pot shatters, the poems are not accepted, the ankle injury sidelines us for an entire dance session. We must remember that our artist is a child, and that what we can handle intellectually far outstrips what we can handle emotionally. We must be alert to flag and mourn our losses. The disappointing reception of a good piece of work, the inability to move across into a different medium or type of role due to the other person's expectations of us, are artistic losses that must be mourned. It does no good to say, oh, it happens to everybody, or who was I kidding anyway? The unmourned disappointment becomes the barrier that separates us from future dreams. Not being cast in the role that's yours, not being asked to join the company, having the show canceled or the play unrevealed. These are all losses. Perhaps the most damaging form of artistic loss has to do with criticism. The artist within, like the child within, is seldom hurt by truth. I will say again that much true criticism liberates the artist it is aimed at. We are childlike, not childish. Aha! Is often the accompanying inner sound when a well-placed, accurate, critical arrow makes its mark. The artist thinks, yes, I can see that. That's right. I can change that. The criticism that damages an artist is the criticism, well intended or ill, that contains no saving kernel of truth, yet has a certain damning plausibility or an unassailable blanket judgment that cannot be rationally refuted. Teachers, editors, mentors are often authority figures or parent figures for a young artist. There is a sacred trust inherent in the bond between teacher and student. This trust, when violated, has the impact of a parental violation. What we are talking about here is emotional incest. A trusting student hears from an unscrupulous teacher that good work is bad or lacks promise, or that he, the guru teacher, senses a limit to the student's real talent, or was mistaken in seeing talent, or doubts that there is talent. Personal in nature, nebulous as to specifics, this criticism is like covert sexual harassment, a sullying yet hard to quantify experience. The student emerges shamed, feeling like a bad artist, or worse, a fool to try. The ivory power. It has been my perilous privilege over the past decade to undertake teaching forays into the groves of academia. It is my experience as a visiting artist that many academics are themselves artistic beings who are deeply frustrated by their inability to create. Skilled in intellectual discourse, distanced by that intellectual skill from their own creative urgings, they often find the creativity of their charges deeply disturbing. Devoted as they are to the scholarly appreciation of art, most academics find the beast intimidating when viewed firsthand. Creative writing programs tend to be regarded with justified suspicion. Those people aren't studying creativity, they're actually practicing it. Who knows where this could lead? I am thinking particularly of a film department chair of my acquaintance, a gifted filmmaker who for many years had been unable or unwilling to expose himself to the rigors and disappointments of creating. Channeling his ferocious creative urges into the lives of his students, he alternately over-controlled and undercut their best endeavors, seeking to vicariously fulfill or justify his own position on the sidelines. As much as I wanted to dislike this man, and I certainly disliked his behaviors, I found myself unable to regard him without compassion. His own thwarted creativity, so luminous in his early films, had darkened to shadow first his own life and then the lives of his students. In the truest sense, he was a creative monster. It took more years and more teaching for me to realize that academia harbors a far more subtle and deadly foe to the creative spirit. Outright hostility, after all, can be encountered. Far more dangerous, far more soul-chilling is the subtle discounting that may numb student creativity in the academia grove. I am thinking now of my time at a distinguished research university where my teaching colleagues published widely and well on film topics of the most esoteric and exotic stripe. Highly regarded among their intellectual peers, deeply immersed in their own academic careers, these colleagues offered scant mirroring to the creative students who passed through their tutelage. They neglected to supply that most rudimentary nutrient, encouragement. Creativity cannot be comfortably quantified Creativity cannot be comfortably quantified in intellectual terms. By its very nature, creativity eschews such containment. In a university where the intellectual life is built upon the art of criticizing, on deconstructing a creative work, the art of creation itself, the art of creative construction, meets with scanty support, understanding, and approval. To be blunt, most academics know how to take something apart, but not how to assemble it. Student work, when scrutinized, was seldom appreciated. Far from it. Whatever its genuine accomplishments, it was viewed solely in terms of its shortfalls. Time and again, I saw promising work met with a volley of should have dones, could have dones, and might have dones, instead of being worked with as it was. It is not my argument that the world of academia be turned into an exalted artist studio. It is, however, my point that artists attempting to exist, grow, even flourish within that milieu recognize that the entire thrust of intellectualism runs counter to the creative impulse. For an artist, to become overly cerebral is to become crippled. This is not to say that artists lack rigor, rather that artistic rigor is grounded differently than intellectual life usually admits. Artists and intellectuals are not the same animal. As a younger artist, this was very confusing to me. I myself have considerable critical gifts. and have in fact won national awards for practicing them. It was to my own rue that I discovered that these same skills were misapplied, that focused on embryonic artistic endeavors, mine or others. Younger artists are seedlings. Their early work resembles thicket and underbrush, even weeds. The halls of academia, with their preference for lofty intellectual theorems, do little to support the life of the forest floor. As a teacher, it has been my sad experience that many talented creatives were daunted early and unfairly by their inability to conform to a norm that was not their own. It would be my hope that the academics who read this book and apply it would do so with the altered appreciation for the authenticity of growth for the sake of growth. In other words, as taller trees, let us not allow our darker critical powers, unfettered, play upon the seedling artists in our midst. Without specific tools and sufficient ego strength, many gifted artists languish for years in the wake of such blows. Shamed as their supposed lack of talent, shamed by their grandiose dreams, the young artists may channel their gifts into commercial endeavors and then forget their dreams of doing more groundbreaking and risky work. They may work as editors instead of writers, film editors instead of film directors, commercial artists instead of fine artists, and get stuck within shouting distance of their dreams. Often audacity, not authentic talent, confers fame on an artist. The lack of audacity, pinched out by critical abuse or malnourished through neglect, may cripple many artists far superior to those we publicly acclaim. In order to recover our sense of hope and the courage to create, we must acknowledge and mourn the scars that are blocking us. This process may seem both painstaking and petty, but it is a necessary rite of passage. Just as a teenager must gain autonomy from an overbearing parent, so too an artist must gain autonomy from malignant artist mentors. When Ted finished writing his first novel, he bravely sent it off to a literary agent. He also sent a check for $100 to pay the agent for taking the time and trouble to read it. What came back was a single page of unusable, irresponsible, and vague reaction. This novel is half good and half bad. That's the worst kind. I can't tell you how to fix it. I suggest pitching it out. When I met Ted, he had been blocked for 7 years. Like many beginners, I hadn't even known to get another opinion. Like many, I say I because I totally relate to that. I finished my book 3 times, and I took it to somebody that I trusted to be the editor that told me it was too acronymy, and I was in my process so much that I allowed the external input to completely scar me and keep me in hiding, humiliated that I'd put so much effort into it, and had the backlash of people that I love dearly say, it's never worked, it never will work, go get yourself a regular job and get on a path I can understand and appreciate. So I messed up saying he because I said me, because what we were talking about before Summer, perfectly relevant. You're unmuted?
Yeah. It reminds me of this. I used to be in film school, and we had this one particular teacher who was in directing, and she was really, really outspoken. She was really, really driven, but she was highly respected because of it, because she had that kind of audacity. But there were certain things that, even though she was our teacher, there were certain things that kind of like fell off, like the truth of what I'd known from other things. And I remember one day I had the opportunity to call her on it one day. And because she was so driven and so direct, she could basically answer any question in the class. But when I brought this one fact up that only I would know because I was in theater earlier, and I knew something that only I would know that she would know, like I called her on it. And it was like one of those moments where you saw like her own like commitment kind of like just stopped for a second. And she went like, okay, I never actually considered that before. And it was an amazing thing, because it was like breaking that kind of like chain where someone who's your authority, like someone who like knows way, way, way more than you are, and is like almost always right and comes through with like such panache and such style, was just like wrong. And it was like almost like an impossible moment, but I was glad that like I just happened to have that piece of information. And it was like one of those moments, like I can relate to everything you're saying, because that has been like a lot of my experience. But that one day was like that moment where I got to like change the story a little bit into my direction where no one else could have like that ability. It was just like, it's a great moment to have, but yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
It is a great moment. And then you also planted the seeds of that awareness into everybody else that was in that room at that moment who was paying enough attention to notice, oh, okay, now I know too. So
Yeah.
that's the ripple effect. That's how we bless humanity. That's how we say, I notice an injustice here, and I'm not going to allow that to continue because it is a mistruth. And it is my responsibility to have been placed on the path that would have led me to the mistruth to be able to say no.
It was one of the moments where I felt like I had called out like an authority who was generally like the authority in this information, who was just wrong about something she was insisting was right. And I felt like it planted the seed inside me too, to think that just because you think you're at like a certain level of knowledge, it's of no less value than the people who seem incredibly well educated or incredibly well versed or incredibly well experienced. Like, you do not understand the wealth that each of us have. It doesn't mean you're always perfect or 100% accurate yourself, but it does mean that you do have that level of value that you value in those people who hold those positions. There's no difference, really. It's just they're there and you're here. So a lot of the times, like, this idea of like participating more in life, it means that you're like on that level already. It's just you haven't recognized it physically, like in your life a lot of the times. And you are worth like that much, like physically, to the point where you would shock yourself if you just like could realize it at like certain moments. Like, if you just look for it, I think you will always find some validation of it like in your life. I think, yeah, it's definitely like a very important experience to have had, for sure.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. When Ted finished writing his first novel, he bravely sent it off to a literary agent. He also sent a check for $100. Oh, and then he came back and said it was. I suggest pitching it out. When I met Ted, he had been blocked for 7 years. Like many beginners, he hadn't even known to get another opinion. It was with great difficulty that he handed his novel over to me. As Ted's friend, I was heartbroken for him. This novel had been manhandled. As a professional, I was impressed. So impressed, I found myself with my first student to unblock. Please try to write again. You can do it. I know you can do it, I started in. Ted was willing to risk unblocking. It is now 12 years since Ted began his work with the Morning Pages. He has written 3 novels and 2 movies. He has an impressive literary agent and a growing reputation. In order to get where he is now, Ted had to refeel and mourn the wounding he had endured as a young writer. He had to make his peace with the lost years this wounding had cost him. At a page at a time, a day at a time, he had to slowly build strength. Like the career of any athlete, an artist's life will have its injuries. These go with the game. The trick is to survive them, to learn how to let yourself heal. Just as a player who ignores a sore muscle may tear it further, an artist who buries his pain over losses will ultimately cripple himself into silence. Give yourself the dignity of admitting your artistic wounds. That is the first step in healing them. No inventory of our artistic injuries would be complete without acknowledging those wounds that are self-afflicted. Many times as artists, we are offered a chance that we balk at, sabotaged by our fear, our low self-worth, or simply our other agendas. Grace was offered an art scholarship in another city, but doesn't want to leave Jerry, her boyfriend. She turns the scholarship down. Jack is offered a dream in his field in a city far away. It's a great job, but he turns it down because of all the friends and family he has where he is. Angela gets terrible reviews in a terrible play and is then offered another lead in a challenging play. She turns it down. These lost chances often haunt us bitterly in later years. We will work more extensively later with our artistic U-turns, but for now, just counting them as losses begins the process of healing them. Gain disguised as loss. Art is the act of structuring time. Look at it this way. A piece of art says, here's how I see it. As my waggish friend, the novelist L. Babbitts remarks, it's all in the frame. This is particularly true when we are dealing with when what we are dealing with is an artistic loss. Every loss must always be viewed as a potential gain. It's all in the framing. Every end is a beginning. We know that, but we tend to forget it as we move through grief. Struck by loss, we focus, understandably, on what we leave behind, the lost dream of the work's successful fruition and its buoyant reception. We need to focus on what lies ahead. This can be tricky. We may not know what lies ahead, and if the present hurts this badly, we tend to view the future as impending pain. Gain disguised as loss is a potent artist's tool. To acquire it, simply, brutally, ask, how can this loss serve me? Where does it point my work? The answers will surprise and liberate you. The trick is to metabolize pain as energy. The key to doing that is to know, to trust, and to act as if a silver lining exists, if only you are willing to look at the work differently or to walk through a different door, one that you may have balked at. In order to catch the ball, you have to want to catch the ball, the film director John Cassavetes once told a young director. Hearing this, I took it to mean stop complaining about the lousy curves you get thrown and stretch. Reach for what you really want. I have tried to follow this advice. For years, I played studio roulette. Repeatedly, original scripts were brought and not made. Repeatedly, fine work languished on studio shelves, the victim of revolving studio doors. Go Pictures became dead overnight, except in my filmmaker's heart, which was breaking. That's just the way it is, I was told repeatedly. If you want to see your films made, you must first sell yourself as a writer, and then if one of your scripts is made, and if that film is a hit, and if the climate warms up a little, then you might get a shot at directing. I listened to this conventional wisdom for a long time, racking up loss after loss, writing script after writing script after script. Finally, after one loss too many, I began to look for the other door, the one I had refused to walk through. I decided to catch the ball. I became an independent filmmaker. I left Hollywood. I went to Chicago, bought a used camera, and using my Miami Vice writing money, shot my own feature, a romantic 40s style comedy. It was in the can for $31,000 and it looked good. Then, incredibly, my sound tapes were stolen. I finished the film anyway, dubbing it in its entirety. Yes, crazy, but so was Cassavetes, my role model. The result won foreign distribution and fine reviews abroad, and I learned a lot. Because I asked how instead of why me, I now have a modest first feature to my credit. It might have happened if I had not taken matters into my own hands, but it might not have either. Since 1974, I have worked rigorously and exhaustively as a film writer. I have written and sold features, short films, documentaries, docudramas, teleplays, movies of the week, and that bastardized movie, the miniseries. I have directed one feature and a half dozen short films. Less visibly, I have labored as a script doctor, credited and not, for hire and for love. To boot, I have written 100+ film essays, film interviews, think pieces, trend pieces, aesthetic pieces, more, all as I toiled as a writer for such diverse publications as Rolling Stone, the New York Times, the Village Voice, New York, New West, the Los Angeles Times, the Chicago Tribune, and most conspicuously American Film, where I served as a contributing editor for many years. In short, you may say, I have done my dharma to my favorite art form. Why all this diverse, hydra-headed productivity? Because I love movies, love making them, and I did not want my losses to take me down. I learned when hit by loss to ask the right question. What next, instead of why me? Whenever I am willing to ask what is necessary next, I have moved ahead. Whenever I have taken no for a final answer, I have stalled and gotten stuck. I have learned that the key to career resiliency is self-empowerment and choice. If you look at long and successful creative careers, you will see this principle in action. The distinguished videographer Shirley Clark began her creative career as a dancer. She first became a filmmaker so that there would be some properly made dance films, distinguishing herself next as a first-rate feature director, winning renown in Europe, if not directing jobs in American studios. Clark became the first American director to shoot a feature in Harlem, the first American director to explore the range of handheld camera, the American director that John Cassavetes, Martin Scorsese, and Paul Schrader all credit as seminal in their own artistic formation. Alas, she was a woman and she lived in difficult times. When her filmmaking revenues dried up, she became one of the first video artists, working with Sam Shepard, Joseph Papp, or Ornette Coleman. Clark clearly took to heart the idea that it was harder to hit a moving target. Whenever one avenue for her creativity was blocked, she found another. Film annals abound with such stories. Elia Kazan, out of favor as a director, wrote novels. The director, John Cassavetes, was also a fine director, using his acting to fund his directing efforts, which were too eclectic for studio backing. If they wouldn't make it as a feature, I'll make it, Cassavetes said, and he did. Rather than allow himself to be blocked, he looked for the other door. We would not enjoy the wonderful series Fairy Tale Theater if actress-producer Shelley Duvall had stayed home complaining during the acting droughts instead of turning her creativity elsewhere. Non-illegitimy to Carbonundrum. The graffiti in Prisoner of War camps is said to have run. The rough translation, very important for artists, is, "Don't let the bastards get you down." Artists who take this to heart survive and often prevail. The key here is action. Pain that is not used profitably quickly solidifies into a leaden heart, which makes any action difficult. When faced with a loss, immediately take one small action to support your artist. Even if all you're doing is buying a bunch of tulips and a sketch pad, your action says, "I acknowledge you and your pain. I promise you a future worth living." Like a small child, our artist needs mummying. Ouch, that hurt. Here's a little treat, a lullaby, a promise. I have a director friend who tells me that on his worst nights, when he is about to open a new film and he awaits career catastrophe, sure that he will never work again in the dark alone, he cajoles himself to sleep. If I can't shoot 35 millimeter, I could still shoot 16 millimeters. If I can't shoot 16 millimeters, then I can shoot video. If I can't shoot video, I can shoot Super 8. Age and time, product and process. Question: do you know how old I'll be by the time I learn to play piano? Answer: the same age you will be if you don't. I'm too old for that ranks with "I don't have money for it" as a great block lie we use to prevent further exploration. I'm too old is something we tell ourselves to save ourselves from the emotional cost of the ego deflation involved in being a beginner. I'm too old to go to film school, I told myself at 35, and when I got to film school, I discovered that I was indeed 15 years older than my classmates. I also discovered I had greater creative hunger, more life experience, and a much stronger learning curve. Now that I've taught in a film school myself, I find that very often my best students are those who came to their work late. I'm too old to be an actor, I have heard many students complain, and dramatically, I might add. They are not always pleased when I tell them this is not the case. The splendid actor John Mahoney did not begin acting until he was nearly 40. 10 years into a highly successful career, he is now often booked 3 films in advance and works with some of the finest directors in the world. I'm too old to really be a writer is another frequent complaint. This is more ego-saving nonsense. Raymond Chandler didn't publish until The Far Side of 40. The superb novel Jules and Jim was written as a first novel by a man in his 70s. I'm too old is an evasive tactic. It is always used to avoid facing fear. Now let's look at the other side. I'll let myself try it when I'm retired. This is an interesting side trip on the same ego-saving track. As a culture, we glorify youth and allow our youth the freedom to experiment, and we disparage our old-timers but allow them the right to be a little crazy. Many blocked creatives tell themselves they are both too old and too young to allow themselves to pursue their dreams. Old and dotty, they might try it. Young and foolish, they might try it. Either scenario, being crazy is a prerequisite to creative exploration. We do not want to look crazy, and trying something like that, whatever it is, at our age, whatever it is, would be nuts. Would look nuts. Yes, maybe. Creativity occurs in the moment, and in the moment, we are timeless. We discover. We talked about now, and it's, yes, amazing. Creativity occurs in the moment, and in the moment, we are timeless. We discover that as we engage in a creative recovery, I felt like a kid, we may say, after a satisfying artist date. Kids are not self-conscious, and once we are actually in the flow of our creativity, neither are we. How long would it take me to learn to do that, we may ask, standing on the sideline of a longed-for activity? Maybe a year to be pretty good. The answer comes back, it depends. As blocked creatives, we like to pretend that a year or even several years is a long, long time. Our ego plays this little trick to keep us from getting started. Instead of allowing ourselves a creative journey, we focus on the length of the trip. It's such a long way, we tell ourselves. It may be, but each day is just one more day with some motion in it, and that motion toward a goal is very enjoyable. At the heart of the anorexia of artistic avoidance is the denial of process. We like to focus on having learned a skill or on having made an artwork. This attention to final form ignores the fact that creativity lies not in the done but in doing. I am writing a screenplay is infinitely more interesting to the soul than I have written a screenplay, which pleases the ego. I am in an acting class is definitely more interesting than I took an acting class a few years ago. In a sense, no creative act is ever finished. You can't learn to act because there is always more to learn. Arguably, you cannot even direct a film because you will always be redirecting it even years later. You will know then what you might have done and what you will do next if you keep working. This doesn't mean that the work accomplished is less. Far from it, it simply means that doing the work points the way to new and better work to be done. Focused on process, our creative life retains a sense of adventure. Focused on product, the same creative life can feel foolish or barren. We inherit the obsession with product and the idea that art produces finished product from our consumer-oriented society. This focus creates a great deal of creative block. We, as working artists, may want to explore a new artistic idea, but we don't see where it will get us. We wonder if it will be good for our career. Fixated on the need to have something to show for our labors, we often deny our curiosities. Every time we do this, we are blocked. Our use of age as a block to creative work interlocks with our toxic finished product thinking. We have set an appropriate age on certain activities: college graduation, going to med school, writing our first book. This artificial ego requirement asks us to be done when what we truly yearn for is to start something. If I didn't think I'd look like a jerk next to the young guys, I'd let myself sign up for an improv class. If my body looked anything the way it did 20 years ago, I'd let myself take that jazzercise class at the Y. If I didn't think my family would consider me a stupid old fool, I'd start playing the piano again. I still remember some of my lessons. If these excuses are beginning to sound flimsy to you, good. Ask yourself if you haven't employed a few of them. Then ask yourself if you can acquire the humility to start something despite your ego's reservations. The grace to be a beginner is always the best prayer for an artist. The beginner's humility and openness lead to exploration. Exploration leads to accomplishment. All of it begins at the beginning with the first small and scary step. There is a logic of colors, and it is with this alone and not with the logic of the brain that the painter should conform. Paul Cézanne. Satisfaction of one's curiosity is one of the greatest sources of happiness in life. Linus Pauling. Art is a technique of communication. The image is the most complete technique of all communication. Claus Oldenburg. The world of reality has its limits. The world of imagination is boundless. John Jacques Rousseau. Man can learn nothing except by going from the known to the unknown. Claude Bernard. I cannot expect even my own art to provide all the answers, only to hope it keeps asking the right questions. Grace Hertigan. Surround yourself with people who respect and treat you well. Claudia Black. To the rationally minded, the mental processes of the intuitive appear to work backwards. Francis Wicks. Trust that still small voice that says, this might work, and I'll try it. Diane Marychild. I shall become a master in this art only after a great deal of practice. E. Rich Fromm. Taking a new step, uttering a new word is what people fear most. Fyodor Dostoevsky. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Albert Einstein. Filling the form. What do I mean by filling the form? I mean taking the next small step instead of skipping ahead to a large one, for which you may not yet be prepared. To be very specific, in order to sell a screenplay, you must first write one. In order to write one, you must come up with an idea and then commit it to paper, a page at a time until you have about 120 pages of script. Filling the form means that you write your daily pages. It means that when obsession strikes, as it will, about how the damn thing is not any good, you tell yourself that this is a question for later and turn back to doing what is the next right thing. And that means you write the pages of the day. If you break a screenplay down into daily increments, that small smattering of writing can get done quickly and promptly before the dirty laundry. And it can carry you through the rest of your day guilt-free and less anxious. Most of the time, the next right thing is something small: washing out your paintbrushes, stopping by the art supply store and getting your clay, checking the local paper for a list of acting classes. As a rule of thumb, it is best to just admit that there is always one action you can take for your creativity daily. This daily action commitment fills the form. All too often, when people look to having a more creative life, they hold an unspoken and often unacknowledged expectation or fear that they will be abandoning life as they know it. I can't be a writer and stay in this marriage. I can't pursue my painting and stay at this dull job. I can't commit to acting and stay in Chicago or Seattle or Atlanta. Blocked creatives like to think they are looking at changing their whole life in one fell swoop. This form of grandiosity is very often its own undoing. By setting the jumps too high and making the price tag too great, the recovering artist sets defeat in motion. Who can concentrate on a first drawing class when he is obsessing about having to divorce his wife and leave town? Who can turn toe out in modern jazz form when she is busy reading the ads for a new apartment since she will have to break up with her lover to concentrate on her art? Creative people are dramatic, and we use negative drama to scare ourselves out of our creativity with this notion of wholesale and often destructive change. Fantasizing about pursuing our art full-time, we fail to pursue it part-time or at all. Instead of writing 3 pages a day on a screenplay, we prefer worrying about how we will have to move to Hollywood if the script gets bought, which it can't anyway, since we are too busy worrying about selling it to write it. Instead of checking into a life drawing class at the local culture center, we buy Art Forum and remind ourselves that our stuff is not in style. How can it be? It doesn't exist yet. Instead of clearing out the little room off the kitchen so that we will have a place to work on our pottery, we complain about needing a studio, a complaint that we ourselves cannot take seriously since we do not have any work to argue our case. Indulging ourselves in a frantic fantasy of what our life would look like if we were real artists, we fail to see the many small creative changes that we could make at this very moment. This kind of look at the big picture thinking ignores the fact that a creative life is grounded on many, many small steps and very, very few large leaps. Rather than take a scary baby step toward our dreams, we rush to the edge of the cliff and then stand there quaking, saying, I can't leap, I can't. No one is asking you to leap. That's just drama. And for the purposes of a creative recovery, drama belongs on the page or the canvas or in the clay or in the acting class or in the act of creativity, however small. Creativity requires activity, and this is not good news to most of us. It makes us responsible, and we tend to hate that. You mean I have to do something in order to feel better? Yes, and most of us hate to do something when we can obsess about something else instead. One of our favorite things to do instead of our art is to contemplate the odds. In a creative career, thinking about the odds is a drink of emotional poison. It robs us of the dignity of art as process and puts us at the mercy of unimagined powers out there. Taking this drink quickly leads to a severe and toxic emotional bender. It leads us to ask, what's the use, instead of what's next? As a rule of thumb, the odds are what we use to procrastinate about doing what comes next. This is our addiction to anxiety in lieu of action. Once you catch on to this, the jig is up. Watch yourself for a week and notice the way you will pick up an anxious thought, almost like a joint to blow off or at least delay your next creative action. You've cleared a morning to write or paint, but then you realize that the clothes are dirty. I'll just think about what I want to paint and fine-tune it while I fold the clothes, you tell yourself. What you really mean is, instead of painting anything, I will worry about it some more. However, somehow, the laundry takes your whole morning. Most blocked creatives have an active addiction to anxiety. We prefer the low-grade pain and occasional heart-stopping panic attack to the drudgery of small and simple daily steps in the right direction. Filling the form means that we must work with what we have rather than languish in complaints over what we have not. As a director, I have noticed that the actors who get work are the actors who work, whether they are working or not. I am thinking specifically about Marg Kotliski, a fine stage and film actress who has always made herself available to work and to workshop writers' materials. She worked with the young playwright David Mamet in the St. Nicholas Theater Group in Chicago, and now works with the somewhat older and more accomplished Dave Mamet, wherever he is working. Rather than rest on any creative laurels, she engages in a very healthy sort of creative restlessness. When she is not engaged in the run of a show, she often takes a class to keep her hand in, and she always is available for read-throughs of new plays. Like all actors, she suffers from the I'll never work again syndrome, but unlike many less committed actors, she never allows herself to make her work something she does only for others and only when she is paid. Yes, she wants to be paid, and I am not arguing here that actors should work for free. What I am saying is that work begets work. Small actions lead to the larger movements in our creative lives. Many actors allow themselves the dubious luxury of handing their careers over to their agents instead of keeping their art in the custody of their souls. When an agent is in charge of your creative life, you can easily despair that my agent doesn't do enough instead of asking what you yourself might do to hone your craft. Fill the form. What can you do right now in your life as it is currently constituted? Do that thing. Take one small daily action instead of indulging in the big questions. When we allow ourselves to wallow in the big questions, we fail to find the small answers. What we are talking about here is a concept of change grounded in respect. Respect for where we are as well as where we wish to go. We are looking not to grand strokes of change, although they may come, but instead to the act of creatively husbanding all that is in the present, this job, this house, this relationship. Recovering creatives commonly undergo bouts of fierce rage and grief over their lost years. When these creative kriyas occur, we desperately want to kick over the traces and get the hell out of life as it is currently constituted. Instead, make changes, small changes, right where you are. Fill this form with creative care until it overflows with a newer, larger form organically. As the poet Theodore Roth phrases it, we learn by going where we have to go. We have found that when we fill the form, we do not often need to make large changes. Large changes occur in tiny increments. It is useful to think in terms of a space flight. By altering the launch trajectory very slightly, a great difference can be made over time. No trumpets sound when the important decisions of our life are made. Destiny is made known silently. Agnes de Mille. I am in the world only for the purpose of composing. Franz Schubert. Early patternings and exercise. We're in the final 6 pages. Although we seldom connect the dots, many of our present-day losses are connected to our earlier conditioning. Children may be told they can't do anything, or equally damaging, be told they should be able to do absolutely anything with ease. Either of these messages blocks the recipient. The following questions are aimed at helping you retrieve and decipher your own conditioning. Some of them may seem not to apply. Write about whatever they trigger for you. So number 1, as a kid, my dad thought my art was blank. That made me feel how? I remember one time when I felt very and about that. I never forgot it. As a kid, my mother taught me that my daydreaming was, I remember she'd tell me to snap out of it by reminding me the person I remember who believed in me was, I remember one time when I felt and about that. I never forgot it. The thing that ruined my chance to be an artist was the negative lesson I got from that, which wasn't logical, but I still believe, is that I can't and be an artist. When I was little, I learned that and were big sins that I particularly had to watch out for. I grew up thinking artists were people. The teacher who shipwrecked my confidence was, I was told, I believed this teacher because the mentor who gave me a good role model was, when people say I have talent, I think they want to. The thing is, I am suspicious that I just can't believe that. If I believe I am really talented, then I am mad as hell at and affirmations. The following affirmations affirm your right to the practice of your creativity. Select 5 affirmations and work with them this week. I am a talented person. I have a right to be an artist. I am a good person and a good artist. Creativity is a blessing. I accept. My creativity blesses others. My creativity is appreciated. I now treat myself and my creativity more generously. I now treat myself and my creativity more generously. Clearly, that's important. I now share my creativity more openly. I now accept hope. I now act affirmatively. I now accept creative recovery. I now allow myself to heal. I now accept God's help unfolding my life. I now believe God loves artists. And then this week, you've got steps in the tasks, which is fun. So there's a goal search. You may find the following exercise difficult. Allow yourself to do it anyway. If multiple dreams occur to you, do the exercise for each one of them. The simple act of imagining a dream in concrete detail helps us to bring it into reality. Think of your goal search as a preliminary architect's drawing for the life you wish to have. The steps. 1, name your dream. That's right, write it down. In a perfect world, I would secretly love to be a... 2, name one concrete goal that signals to you its accomplishment. On your emotional compass, this goal signifies true north. Note, 2 people may want to be an actress. They share that dream. For one, an article in People magazine is the concrete goal. To her, glamour is the emotional center of her dream. Glamour is true north. For the second actress, the concrete goal is a good review in a Broadway play. To her, respect as a creative artist is the emotional center of her dream. Respect is true north. Actress 1 might be happy as a soap star. Actress 2 would need stage work to fulfill her dream. On the surface, both seem to desire the same thing. In a perfect world, number 3, where would you like to be in 5 years in relation to your dream and true north? 4, in the world we inhabit now, what action can you take this year to move you closer? 5, what action can you take this month, this week, this day, right now? 6, list your dream. For example, to be a famous film director, list its true north: respect and higher consciousness, mass communication. Select a role model: Walt Disney, Ron Howard, Michael Powell. Make an action plan: 5 years, 3 years, 1 year, 1 month, 1 week, now. Choose an action. Reading this book is an action. Getting on this call is an action. Well done. Thank you as well. I do love to be able to have others that are here to share the energy of what this is about, because truly we are the artists who are painting this world.
It just happened, I guess, synchronistically. Yeah, because I totally am like an artist. Sorry, I just got lost here. I was like, yeah, there. Yeah, but yeah. I didn't expect. I was actually just seeing that you were live. I didn't know what you were actually talking about, but it was just like the perfect, yeah. I'm like, so I'm relating to so much of this. I'm just like, yeah.
And the conversation we were having at the beginning was so timely for all of this too, because it is strength to be able to get yourself into a call where it's like you're needing some filling, or maybe with everything that you've been through, it's like you plugged yourself in where you could receive the way that you've been giving from that overflow and abundance for so often, in order to be able to then give from that overflow and abundance again. And you showed up on the week about strength. So the timing of that is just, it's a personal affirmation for you, I would say, but it's also so much more just in terms of everything is here to serve us. Everything is happening for us. It's not happening to us. It's all about what you had even said earlier to Summer about the fact that I lost it. Were you going to say something?
No, well, actually, I was thinking about what we were talking about earlier about the masters and how this is like the ultimate form of art, like this art of ascension, essentially. Mm-hmm. Like, I know that after my awakening, which was actually right at the end of film school, there was this period where I felt like that is exactly what happened. Like my life became kind of like this art piece, and everything became like a palette, kind of like that. I was like not so much painting the world around me, but like appreciating or recognizing the art and everything. And when you approach life that way, it literally starts to demand that you change in certain ways. Almost like if you were to pick up like an instrument, like a violin or something like that, the most beautiful sound you can produce requires your body to like be at a certain level of fitness, at a certain level of balance or rest or whatnot. And it really calls you to be like that. So when you find that kind of like instrument just in the life that you live, it can really become like an art piece, kind of that your work that's calling you to be in a certain way, almost like a partnership, almost like a dance with like reality, kind of. Like in many ways, like art is like just perfect as a template for like ascension, because I think it really, really just helps you understand that in like a more relatable way, I guess.
Yeah, we're the masterpiece, truly.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
I love it. Thank you. There's just a few more. I can't believe how long this chapter is, because we've been on here for an hour and a half this morning, and it's just like, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sticking around and getting what you need from the call as well. So we'll go through new childhood. What might have been if you'd had perfect nurturing? Write a page of this fantasy childhood. What were you given? Can you reparent yourself in that direction now? There's color schemes. Pick a color and write a few sentences describing yourself as in the first person. I am silver, high tech, and ethereal. The color of dreams and accomplishment. The color of half light, and in between, I feel serene. Or I am red, I am passion, sunset, anger, blood, wine, and roses, armies, murder, lust, and apples. What is your favorite color? What do you have that is in that color? Or what do you have that is that color? What about your entire room? This is your life and your house. List 5 things that you are not allowed to do. Kill your boss, scream in church, go outside naked, make a scene, quit your job. Now do that thing on paper. Write it, draw it, paint it, act it out, collage it. Now put some music on it and dance. Style search. List 20 things you like to do. Perhaps the same 20 or perhaps the same 20 you listed before, perhaps not. Answer these questions for each item. Does it cost money or is it free? Expensive or cheap? Alone or with somebody? Job-related, physical risk? Fast-paced or slow? Mind, body, or spiritual? Your ideal day. Plan a perfect day in your life as it is now constituted using the information gleaned from above. 7. Ideal day. Plan a perfect day in your life as you wish it were constituted. There are no restrictions. Allow yourself to be and to have whatever your heart desires. Your ideal environment, job, home, circle of friends, intimate relationship, stature in your art form, your wildest dreams. 8. Choose one festive aspect from your ideal day. Allow yourself to live it. You may not be able to move to Rome yet, but even in a still grungy apartment you can handle, or you can enjoy a homemade cappuccino and croissant. And then the check-in, the final 4. How many days this week did you do your morning pages? Have you been very tempted to abandon them? How was the experience for you? 2. Did you do your artist date this week? Have you been allowing workaholism or other commitments to sabotage this practice? What did you do? How did it feel? 3. Did you experience any synchronicity this week? What was it? And 4. Were there any other issues this week that you consider significant for your recovery? Describe them. And that is the end of the chapter on strength. And next Sunday, we will come together again for the chapter on recovering a sense of compassion for our sacred self-compassion services. So this is what we do on Sundays. And I'm grateful that you were able to join this morning, Summer Wind, and would love for you to be able to come back next week and for more people to be able to come on.
Well, actually, usually on Sundays in the morning, there's a meetup that I'm part of. It was just that it was one of those off weeks this Sunday, so I had the opportunity to show up here. So
beautiful. Well, thank you for doing that. And truly, it is about connection and community. And ultimately, Sundays are sacred days. It's how we start our week. And generally speaking, how we start something is the energy we bring into it. So if we're not intentional about crafting the start of our week in a positive and uplifting and healthy way, then ultimately that's going to just go into our week. And then by the end of it, it's just TGIF, right? But yeah. Ultimately, the only difference between a Monday, a Friday, or a Saturday is our approach to it and what we have to do during it. And so if we can just shift ourselves out of looking at things like they're happening to us and realize they're all happening for us, and that when something doesn't work out, it's because something else is meant to. And if we go with the flow of that, then we get on the next call that will add value to us in a way that would have been different than had we done what we always did to get more of what we always get. Even though we get something different every time that we go, which is why we keep going to the things that we continue going to. It's just about recognizing if we can stay in the flow, then we can truly go where it's going to best serve us instead of trying to force ourselves into those little compartmentalized boxes of what we thought we needed to be or who we needed to belong with. And something earlier I wanted to just say about is, in life, it's not just about who you know. It's about who wants to know you. Because it's not that Saint Germain was born with wealth. It's the fact that he was invited to stay with the royals and the ones who felt his energy and wanted it around them. And I've had that experience in my life a lot, where people have invited me along for opportunities because they love the presence that I bring with me. And I'm not saying that to put myself on any pedestal, but it is to say that when you are able to embody more light because you've been willing to go within to cast the shadows out that really kick and scream and fight on their way out, which is what's so traumatizing for us in that process, once we've done that work, we embody a different energetic signature that allows people to recognize us in a way that makes them want to share the resources that they have because of what they're getting from the energy exchange they may not realize is what they're paying for.
Yeah, that has been something. Like when I say I had my awakening, it was a Kundalini awakening. So it was like it had like a very like pronounced like physical effect in like a lot of different areas of my life, and that was one of the things that like I've had that kind of like physical experience too, but like in great ways, like to the point where like even dogs were like kind of like very excited around me for the first time. There was all sorts of like little things that kind of just like suddenly opened, and it was really just that it was like a shift in how I approached what like the way I was living that literally opened that energy and allowed it to like flow through me in such a natural way. It changed everything about me. It changed my body physically in a way that I can't go back to like the person that I was. Like I have to like continue to move forward in some way. It can be like extremely challenging, but at the same time, I agree completely with you. There's like another level of experience of yourself and of life when you're embracing more of your natural self. It's like kind of like this thing you have written at the top there, normal is not natural.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I was just looking at that before and I was like, yes, absolutely. Your natural self is really where all the gifts and the experience that you want are like located. So yeah, I agree with that.
I love it. I love today. I am so grateful. My heart is just so full. I appreciate you for showing up today. I appreciate everyone who is tuned in. I appreciate everyone who shares this message and helps more people understand that we're stronger when we're together, which is why I have so many opportunities for people to be able to come together and connect. I feel like warriors need to be able to recognize one another. And ultimately, it's the warriors who show up that are willing to say, hey, I'm here. And I'm going to get what I can get from this. And I'm going to give what I can give to this too, because you've done that. And it's very much appreciated, Summer Wind. So thank you for showing up today on this sacred self-compassion service today. And just while we have these last final moments, if we can just send out some love and energy. I have a little prayer bag that's of a positive vibe with a little graduation hat, because this is the ascension. So if you want to put anybody's name into the you did it bag for the prayer bag, you could put any names of people or relationships that would benefit from having some compassion sent their way, some healing sent their way. So we're just sending all the people that we envision putting into the bag. We're just going to send them love, and we make sure that we put our own names in there as well, because every time we give, we also receive, which is not the point of giving, but ultimately it's an important reminder that when we give, we do get back, but we have to be mindful of making sure that we're filling the well as well. So let's just send some love and good juju into this world. And we'll say on Tuesday at 3:30 Eastern, we will be coming together for it's Mental Health and Harmonizing Humanity with Music Summit. If you're interested, please do come out for that. You can get the emails at ljeh.ca. I send out emails to the people subscribed there. And so that has the call-in details, or will for the Friday call as well, I mentioned. And on Thursdays at 4:00, if you wanted to come for the Peaceful Inner Warriors United Lawfully Organized Summit, that's an opportunity. Pardon?
You have a lot going on.
Yeah. Well, I've just kind of taken it on from the perspective of warriors need to be able to recognize one another. And I feel like we've all got these movements, and, you know, you got this movement and this movement and this movement and this movement. And sure, this is a movement too for Peaceful Inner Warriors United. But ultimately, my hope is that we can start gathering some of the movements and then have one space to be able to connect, where all of the movements, which are all striving towards the same thing, are able to gain more traction, because instead of having to focus on my box or your box, we can just make it our box. And if we make it the We Too movement, then truly we revolutionize the victim mentality and culture that we have accepted up until now and perpetuated unconsciously, because oftentimes we participated in it unconsciously until we know better, and then we can do better when we have the accountability of others who are doing better or trying to do better, who are continuing to take the small baby steps that ultimately are what climb the mountain of ascension in the end too. So it doesn't have to be miraculous, but we just have to be willing to just continue to bless, to continue to send the energy where it needs to go, and continue to get ourselves in the spaces where we can get what we need from it too. So
absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone. And may you have an incredible week. And please do join in any of those opportunities. And if you are interested in hearing more of Saint Germain on alchemy as well, I do read that on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock. So we're going through this. It's books 2. Well, there's 4 books in this one that we'll be going through in total. But this is one of the 4 pillars of the teachings of the Ascended Masters. So Katumi on the aura is the first recommended book to get into with the teachings. Then you have book 2 and 3 in this book here. And then the 4th pillar within the teachings of the masters is the advanced studies of the human aura.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna log us off, and we can have an offline conversation. And anybody that shows up in future, then there is opportunity to have the offline conversation. But until you get yourself in the room, you don't have the opportunity. So thank you guys, and have a good one. All right, just give me 1 second. I gotta get over on YouTube, through YouTube, and have an amazing week. I send you massive love, appreciation, and you're awesome. Toodaloo. Okay.